Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast. It's Wednesday, November 16th, and I'm Blair Kirchhoff. On today's show, Star columnist Vahe Gregorian and Royals beat writer Lynn Worthy discussed the news from a day earlier when Royals owner John Sherman announced through a letter the most definitive plans to date about a new downtown ballpark and entertainment district. We have a $2 billion estimate on the project. Also, it would be a private-public finance deal with the suggestion that Jackson County residents continue to pay the 3/8 sales tax they approved about 15 years ago for renovations to Kauffman and Arrowhead. But what we don't have is a timetable. The letter also said that Sherman and the Royals would engage in a listening tour to gauge public sentiment. After a break, we also discussed the recent re-signing of Ryan O'Hearn. And did the media get it right in voting for Witt Jr. and Brady Singer as Royals player and pitcher of the year? Okay, let's get started. I got an interesting email on Tuesday. I bet you guys did too. Lynn Worthy and Vahe Gregorian. Let's kind of break down what that letter from Royals owner John Sherman said and what it didn't say. Lynn, we'll start with you. What do we know? I think it's the most definitive statement about a new downtown ballpark that we've seen. But in being definitive, it left open a lot of questions, did it not?
Yeah, I think it was definitely the most strong indication that their plan is to go downtown. Whereas before, I think a lot of the talk was they were exploring, they were studying, they were getting feedback, and trying to make sure that things would whatever they did, and sort of leaving it open that whatever they did, wherever they played, was going to sort of fit certain criteria and do certain things. But I think this was the first time that it was like, listen, the K is not going to do it. They want to go downtown. They've got their eyes on certain places downtown. They didn't specify a number of places, but I think, within reason, I think a lot of places have already sort of pointed out what some of those potential sites have been. And this was the first time that we've seen the owner of the team point out that this is what they want to do, and then make a little bit of the case as far as the potential impact with some numbers behind that. As far as, what that could mean jobs-wise, economic impact-wise, and what it could mean for the region for the next, decade plus.
We did get a price tag, didn't we, Vahe?
Yeah, we got a price tag-ish, right? And, Blair, first of all, I'm curious, when you got that letter in your mailbox, was it to you as a member of the media or a member of the community? Because it was written to, I think it was media. I think we were on that list, but it was an interesting release of all this. Yeah, so the price tag, I guess not to really try to use a pun, but I guess the ballpark figure is about $2 billion. And Lynn, I feel like you did, and you do, I think also, Blair. We do feel like this moves the chains a little bit on telling us what this will entail, but things like the site and the timeline and things like that are also what we're all kind of waiting to get a grasp of. I think there's reasons for that. I do think the process has been very deliberate. I think a skeptic would say it's not been as open as the Royals feel it's been, but I think the proof will be in the pudding, right? As they try to start contouring this through, as least as we understand it, they're going to start contouring it to some of the things they hear and trying to give us a better notion of what's out there and respond to it with this listening tour. The one thing, just to go back to a point Lynn made, I do think it was a bit of a foregone conclusion that they're going to move downtown. On the other hand, this checks that box in a different way, and it's a different part of the equation. But the Chiefs have basically been saying, well, it all depends on what the Royals do, and the Royals physically making this move and all that is another matter. But now, I mean, the field opens up for the Chiefs, not necessarily to hurry up their timeline to tell us what they're going to do, but that building block theoretically is out of the way. And now I think that's the next phase of what everybody would like to know. Okay, Chiefs, what are you really thinking here? Because that whole turf is going to be yours to work with.
Sure. One thing that struck me about the letter and the information in it was it's the first time that I had seen not just a price tag. Hey, listen, that $2 billion price tag, stadiums don't cost $2 billion, but what opened my eyes was it comes with an entertainment district. And I hadn't seen that associated with a downtown ballpark. We've talked about it with the Chiefs and what might happen if the Royals leave the Truman Sports Complex, but I hadn't seen that with the Royals.
Yeah, 100%. And look, they had certainly spoken of it, wanting to have a broader, real and measurable impact, things of that nature in the area. And I think, I won't speak for anybody else, but my sense of John Sherman is he's a shrewd businessman, but he's also very civic minded. And I think there's, a trail of that we can see in his life in terms of what he's done with so many different causes in Kansas City. So I'm of the mind that he's not doing this project unless he has that aspect to the project. That a ballpark's just a ballpark in a sense, right? I think he thinks there really could be something revitalizing in this. And to your point, Blair, certainly more specifics about that than we've seen before. I mean, it looks like office development, hotel, restaurants, a desire to have public transportation, substantial public transportation come there, things like that. I just think that did fill in some gaps on what was this generic idea. And again, not overly specific. Some of those things I'm sure are subject to change, but starts to shade it in a little bit.
Yeah. I think one thing I want to point out too is you mentioned that $2 billion is an overall price tag. It's not clear, how much of that is just the stadium. Like they haven't separated out. They purposefully, I'm pretty sure, did not separate out what the stadium ballpark from the whole project because they're looking at it as an entire entity. But also along those lines, I guess I know you guys are right in that they hadn't necessarily talked about it in that light necessarily, previously, like in vague terms, but like now that they're actually putting a number on it as a whole project, not just a ballpark. But I wasn't surprised in that, going back to last year when they first brought it up and we did some reporting on what a downtown ballpark might look like and what it might mean. I remember talking to, I think it was, hopefully I'm getting the name right, Jonathan O'Neill Cole, who's the guy in charge of Pendulum, the architecture firm, who had talked to me, from one of the stories we did, talked to me about, they had come up with a design of a ballpark for downtown just on, speculation. But they had worked on multiple minor league parks, had helped in renovating other parks and all sort of stuff. And that is sort of the model for almost all these ballparks that are getting made nowadays. Is it's not just a stadium. It's, even at the minor league level, you're putting something in a town in I think one of the examples was Gastonia, North Carolina or something like that. And the ballpark was part of a larger district, part of a larger, construction project, a redevelopment project. And so, there was a price tag for the stadium in a lot of those cases, but really that was part of a larger, bigger multi-million-dollar complex or, development where there's shops, housing, all these different things. And I think that was maybe it was just for me more eye-opening, and that's the way that these people who are looking at designing stadiums and, putting them in these places look at this entire thing is like that's the way it is now, whether you're talking about Kansas City, a minor league place, a place like San Diego when they put that new ballpark where they put it as opposed to where it was before. That is sort of the MO nowadays, is that it's looked at as a package deal, and that's really sort of goes into the design aspect of it.
Hey, just to add to that really quickly, I hope one of the other things that was at least more explicitly stated yesterday was the Royals' reference to that they will specifically invest hundreds of millions of dollars in this as they continue to refer to a public-private partnership. But to Lynn's point, the hundreds of millions of dollars, I don't have the wording right in front of me, but it was pretty specifically parsed to the ballpark and the district. So what we don't know, what I don't know anyway, is how much the assumption can be made. X amount would be toward a ballpark itself, X amount towards a district itself. One of the things, Blair, you've been here for this whole thing. Lynn and I have not, but one of the points they're trying to make about the tax situation is the 3/8 cents tax that's been in place since, I believe, 2006 when they started the renovation, and maybe it was before that, but at least since the renovations of the ballparks out there. I think the notion is, well, we're just going to be asking that you continue that. And that under that umbrella, it's not going to be asking for more money out of Jackson County taxpayers. You may have a better recollection of the beginnings of that and how that has played, but that struck me as something that bears more exploration in terms of what it really amounts to, but as a point that they're going to try to emphasize.
No doubt about it that needs to be further discussed and explored, and I think that may be one of the things that Frank White was talking about in his statement. We just need more answers. And look, you're not going to get the definitive answers within 24 hours of the announcement. I think it's just going to take, and that's what the what I'll call the magical listening tour will accomplish over Kansas City, coming to take the magical listening tour. I'm looking forward to joining that tour at some stops, but yeah, I if memory serves, that ballot measure passed easily back in 2006. That people were willing to do what it took to upgrade and renovate Kauffman Stadium and Arrowhead. That's when Arrowhead, that was the beginning of the new press box that went to the top of Arrowhead, and a lot of great changes in the outfield area of Kauffman Stadium came from that fundraising.
Here's something I really don't understand, and it only now occurs to me. I do believe we can anticipate the Chiefs continuing to seek public money for whatever project is about to unfold from them, and it might be a mega project. And what I don't know is how that fits into this tax ask, and whether that would have to be a different thing or would it all go to the same place? I mean, I don't know. We're talking about two different districts and projects at this point, not one that's folded under one. And I wish I had thought that through before I brought it up, to be honest, because I haven't really researched it and I don't know the answer. But I think it is a question that is not answerable right now. And I think it merits some scrutiny.
Well, something else that merits further questioning is the Royals are not the first Kansas City pro sports team to will have begun a project in downtown. The Kansas City Current, which also aims to create an entertainment district with its new stadium that has started and is expected to open in 2024, would be, I don't know, a mile away from where we think a new stadium would go, sort of on the east of downtown. And I wonder if I just wonder if the conflict is significant enough, potential conflict is significant enough to could the area support two entertainment districts right there, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Blair, my quick answer to that is that I hope these are things that are sort of complementary and augment and not up against each other. My perception of the current project is that while they hope for some development right around it, there is already some anticipated development right around it with a new hotel and things like that. I don't believe what they're seeking to do would incorporate, let's say, a business park or some other things of the ilk that we're talking about, with at least this preliminary idea of what the Royals would do. And again, my perception is that a lot of it will be the entertainment district. A lot of that entertainment is right at the stadium, in the stadium. versatility to do things there of a little different size and magnitude that this Royals ballpark would be. I don't think we saw anything suggesting what a capacity would be at the Royals Park. I'm guessing in the low 30s. And this, one of the things the Current has really touted, and I think is indeed correct, is that 11,500, I think, is their size, and it's somewhat distinct around the nation and certainly in Kansas City. So, long-winded way of saying, I think they would be driving towards a couple of different things. Maybe there's things they'd compete with each other for, but I think there's a chance it's really a nice compliment.
As soon as the Royals posted on Twitter the letter, and I looked at some of the responses, the first responses that I saw were from the joyless economic study people that were just pounding back with their, this doesn't generate any income. And it's the story that you often read, citing the studies of how little income new ballpark stadiums generate, and how they're just not a great idea from a public funding standpoint. Lynn, you did some discovery on this a year ago, and I know that when I was wrote a story in that time, just trying to gauge public interest in a new stadium. Maybe it was a combination of the Royals not having success on the field, people enjoying the Kauffman Stadium experience, but there just wasn't an overwhelming demand for a new stadium. There really is going to have to be a kind of a sales job by John Sherman on this, I think, and maybe that's what these listening tours are going to be about.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be, I think if you're just going to tell people that we're going to plop this stadium down in this spot and it's going to generate millions of dollars, like poof, then that's not really. I don't think that's going to fly. I don't think anybody. And to be fair, I don't think that's what they're doing either, because I think, like you said, there's the sell job has already started. If you look at that letter, you can tell the sell job's already started. I think even before they gave specific numbers, in all of John Sherman's previous comments, there was this, has to be good for the community, like that common refrain he had, has to be good for, the Royals, for the community, for, to help develop certain parts of areas of downtown. And so I don't think it's any coincidence that those have been sort of the talking points as he's been talking about this even before you had numbers. Because he knows that you have to, sell people that, okay, this is not just something that's for the Royals, that is going to do something for, people who aren't there just to watch games. There's going to do something for, the city, the county, and that, there's going to be substantial gain aside from, a better venue to watch baseball in. So I think that's, and I don't have numbers in front of me, but that's why I think it's interesting to look at, places that have had stadiums for multiple years that, obviously on the front end, there was numbers that said, okay, this is what you're going to get out of the stadium. And then, now that they've had a stadium for, 10, 15 years, whatever, like what have those numbers looked like, in the aftermath, like, as far as the increased foot traffic and obviously the construction jobs, like those are the ones that, like, those numbers I think are pretty easy to say, okay, well, we know those ones they'll hit. Somebody's going to have to build this thing. Yeah. Somebody's going to have to build this thing. There's going to be man hours and money attached to that. But as far as the economic development and bringing other people in from outside and what that means for the region, as a whole, and increased, whether it's tax money or just income, those are the ones that I think you really have to sell. And again, like I said, without having it in front of me, it'd be interesting to sort of go back and look at what it was in some of those places. Because I think in some places you saw a significant increase in those things. And then, of course, I'm sure, proponents would say, oh, you also factor in what that means for, the old site, like as far as like the Chiefs, what they do with that and whatever they do with that, do with that area. And if that something comes from that, then, that's also something that you wouldn't have if the Royals stayed in place. So, but yeah, the sell job, I think, has already begun and will only increase as things go along.
Just first of all, two of my favorite words, plop and poof. And isn't it too bad that it can't just be that process? But something just occurred to me that maybe you guys have thought about. But first of all, we got all this against the backdrop of whatever preparations need to be getting made for the World Cup. Now, luckily, Kansas City already has, as far as I understand it, Blair, you certainly could disabuse me of this, but basically all the facilities are in place. It's just the Arrowhead's going to need a substantial overhaul and some things like that. But let's just assume, for argument's sake, that the Chiefs are going to decide to use the space that Kauffman's in, tear that down, and build a new Arrowhead with a attached football village, or whatever you want to call it, whether it's a Green Bay model or a New England model with a mall. And let's just throw in a retractable roof for the argument's sake. We're talking about two immense, vast projects. The Royals certainly would be that way, and the Chiefs certainly would be that way. Strikes me that even if the Chiefs told us tomorrow that's what they're going to do, there's going to have to be, I don't know how these workforces overlap, but these are going to be things that probably have to be done in different time frames from each other. I mean, I don't think you can have both those going on at once. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's such a workforce that, you can just do it all and have half of Kansas City being built all at once. But it just strikes me that the time frames are going to have to be a little different no matter what decisions get made.
Yeah, cranes all over the city, maybe. I do think, just in terms of the World Cup, this, without having spoken to anyone who knows this, but picking up some chatter earlier, that one of the ideas is for the World Cup is, or when they met the FIFA folks for that, the FIFA folks really like the idea of the underground tunnels that connect Kauffman and Arrowhead. In terms of moving people and officials and things like that, and so maybe it's whatever the timetable for a new downtown ballpark is, Kauffman would stay intact and be used somehow for World Cup soccer as well, some kind of facility that can be used for practice or whatever, however team or country wants to use it.
Yeah, for that reason and others, I agree with you. I think that they cannot afford. I mean, the good news for the Royals is, if the assumption is they're moving, they're not looking to build a place out there that would interfere with what they got to get ready for the World Cup, right? It'd be away from there. On the other hand, for the reasons you point out, I think, Blair, with some of the chatter we picked up might have been also even, looking at Kauffman as a staging ground or whatever, and then you got the tunnels, all that kind of thing. So we don't have any contracts in front of us, but I would sort of assume that Kauffman being in place is part of the World Cup bid, and that really can't be changed or shouldn't be changed. So again, and I think logically we understand that the Chiefs probably wouldn't really begin anything till after the World Cup anyway. One of the things it's funny, right? I think the last price tag we heard on the overhauls at Arrowhead would be like $50 million to get it the way they need it. And that's where you start asking questions about the sunk cost. And if you're going to do that, what do you have to spend to get it back? And wouldn't that money be a better down payment towards whatever else they're going to do? So anyway, it's just interesting to try to project how one thing will affect the other and in what time frame. I mean, but I don't imagine we're going to see whatever the Chiefs do. I don't imagine we're going to see anything much before 2030 or so that to be done. Maybe it could be started before then, but I think we're a long ways away from a time where they can start taking action.
Okay, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, there's some on-field issues with the Royals we need to discuss, and we'll be right back. Hey, this is Blair. There are several ways to access the Star Sports section. Let me tell you about a couple of them. There's Sports Pass. For $12.99 a month, you get unlimited digital access to all of the Star Sports content, including beat writing, columns, features, pretty much everything we write. The deal renews monthly until you tell us to cancel. For $159.99 a year, you get everything the Star has to offer digitally, including sports and the e-edition. Go to kansascity.com and drop down to the bottom of the page where it says Start a Subscription for more information. Your support has never been more important. As always, thanks for reading and listening. We're back on SportsBeat KC talking Royals baseball with Lynn Worthy and Vahe Gregorian. Lynn, Royals, some roster moves here in the last few days, and looks like the Royals have decided to bring back Ryan O'Hearn. And listen, he's shown flashes, right? And he's got some pop in the bat, but here's a guy who really has suffered because of the shift, right? The defensive shift, I think, over the as a major leaguer. Do you think that the change in the shift rules for next year, you're not going to be able to line three guys up on one side of the infield, is going to help a player like Ryan O'Hearn? Is that a reason to bring him back?
I think that's a reason, or one of the reasons that the Royals are at least going to stick with him, because I mean, I've we mentioned Twitter earlier, so I know Twitter had a field day with O'Hearn coming back, and because what doesn't Twitter have a field day with? But I mean, and obviously, you could point and say, all right, well, he's 29, and he hasn't really, blossomed into what they thought back in 2018. We had this record-setting start to his career. You've got some other guys, or left-handed hitted sluggers who play for that first base outfield, and just cut ties with him. I've seen plenty of people make that case quite more colorfully than I just did on Twitter. But I think the other side of that is just okay, well, this is a guy who they feel like there's still potential there, whether it's hard hit rates, whether it's what he did earlier in his career, whether it's what he's done throughout his minor league career. The fact that even just as a pinch hitter this year, there was some production there that isn't necessarily an easy thing to do in that limited role. And then you take away the shift and you say, okay, well, maybe there's, something that can still be, extracted from that, whether that's him becoming more of an impact player, whether that's him increasing his value. When you look at the fact that you've got Vinny Pasquantino and Nick Pratto, and maybe this guy might not be there long-term, but if you're going to try and do something with him, get something for him showing that he can do something in this, post-shift era, maybe that increases that value. And also the fact that, I know people say, well, he's an older guy and he's taking up space. Like, if you look at the numbers, this is a guy, one of the four guys who was on the roster, active roster, the entire season last year, didn't play in even half of the games, had fewer than 150 at bats. That playing time that he's supposedly taking away, like if they brought, Vinny Pasquantino up and that was how much they were playing him, people would be, out there with pitchforks. So that argument really doesn't mean much to me. But I think the fact that, the price tag isn't really that high, less than $1.5 million. He's under control for 2 more years anyway. So I think there's, is it one of those things where you got to hold on to this guy? You can make the case you don't have to hold on to that guy, but I also think you can make the case that it's not hurting anybody to hold on to him at that low price tag and with, more upside potentially as far as, value or, production.
Okay, let's final thought. Did we in the media get the Royals player and pitcher of the year correct? Bobby Witt was named player of the year and Brady Singer pitcher of the year. Vahe, was that your ballot?
It wasn't. I have to look back at my ballot. Brady Singer was, but I think I can't remember the way it was laid out, but I had Salvador Perez as the player of the year.
Okay, that to me would have been the only alternative for
yeah. But I certainly understand the case for Bobby Witt. Speaking of Twitter, by the way, I've decided there's no point in responding to people from Baltimore who are disputing that Bobby Witt belonged on the Rookie of the Year ballot. But Lynn had some nice figures that reminded me of why in his story today, and all the things that he led the major leagues in among rookies, and all the things he was still high up in that he didn't lead. I mean, I'm digressing for a second, but I do think that you can make a case for a lot of different guys in that category, and I think Bobby Witt had a lot going for him, despite some things even he wanted to have go better this year. So I thought Salvador had an amazing year. He continues to defy age, which is really something I can't figure out based on how big he is, how hard this has been on his body. I don't really understand how he keeps going the way he has.
No, he's amazing. Lynn, was that your ballot? Witt, Singer?
Actually, I had like Vahe, I had Salvador Perez as Player of the Year, Singer as the Pitcher of the Year, and then Bobby as the Special Achievement Award. Just considering the production that Salvi had, with I think he ended up with 114 games because he had an IL stint. And then, midseason surgery on his thumb, and then came back and still produced as much as he did in a truncated season, and also just the fact that I think people still undervalue just the impact of having a guy behind the plate doing just a guy who can work with the pitching staff and then also be a middle of the order bat and your primary driver of the offense. So I had him, and then obviously Bobby as the special achievement, just with everything that he did this year for a rookie. And I don't think there's really much debate on Brady Singer and what he's done this season. Storyline aside from starting off the year in the bullpen to becoming the ace, but just the production, the 10 wins, the ERA under 4, the being the stopper for that staff.
Right. Okay, great conversation, guys. We'll have many more as news breaks on the new stadium, and perhaps we'll see each other on the Magical Listening Tour. So, thanks to Lynn Worthy and Vahe Gregorian, and we'll do it again soon, guys. That'll do it for today. Thanks to Randy Mason for putting together today's show, and to our SportsBeat KC production staff of Monty Davis, George Howard, and Jeff Rosen. Tip of the cap to Vahe Gregorian and Lynn Worthy for sharing their insights. Morning Sports Edition had full coverage of today's Royals news, plus coverage of KU's victory over Duke, Missouri's big win, and all national sports news. Go to liveedition.kansascity.com for more information. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with another SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in and around Kansas City every day.